Welcome to the Walking Dead podcast. Here we share stories from veterans and family members of the 1st Battalion 9th Marines, offering a captivating glimpse into their experiences. As we explore their powerful testimonies, we address the challenges veterans face today, sparking meaningful conversations for anyone connected to military life. Join us on this journey of resilience and connection.
My son is Corporal Aaron Ripperda, and he was one of 7 Marines that was killed in the training accident in Hawthorne, Nevada, March 18th of 2013. Oh, what can I say about him?
How about how he joined the Marine Corps? What was that conversation like?
Well, it's really interesting with Aaron because he had decided I always have to revert back to when he was a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Aaron was about 6 years old. And he would come to me and he goes, Mommy. I'm like, what? He goes, I'm going to fight in God's army. And I said, okay. And then he got to be where he was like 10 years old, 9, 10 years old. And he'd come and he goes, Mom. And I'm like, what? He goes, one day I'm going to fight in God's army. Okay. And then when he got to be 12 years old, he's like, Mom, I think one day I'm going to join the Marines. And I was like, oh, not the Air Force? Why not? You know, not you know, because Mom's going to like try to protect her, you know, cub.
Right.
And he was like, Mom, I'm going to join the Marines. And I said, why? He goes, well, because if I'm going to fight in God's army, I have to have the best training possible. He goes, and I've researched all of the branches, and the Marines have the best training. You know, so then after that time period, 9/11 happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that time he was maybe 15 when it happened. And he told me, he goes, Mom, if I was 18, I would join today. So I just knew, you know, there's a part of me that just kind of knew that it was going to go that way, but yet still afraid, you know?
Yeah.
So then one day he gives me a call and he goes, Mom, I said, what? He goes, well, I've joined the Marines. And I'm like, what? No. I mean, it was like, no, you know, and I think it's because I had this heart-sinking feeling that something was going to happen.
Right.
And I think that part for me was hard, you know, hard to deal with because I am Mom and I want to protect my baby bear, right?
Right.
And so he told me that, you know, it was like, Mom, you know, I'm thinking of joining the Marines. That's what he said. I'm thinking of joining the Marines. I'm like, you know, trying to convince him any other way. He had to go off to boot camp, which was kind of rough, you know, and, you know, it was hard not hearing from him because first you can't write to him. And then after that, you try to encourage him. And I know that boot camp was kind of tough for him. There was a point when he got kind of really low. And I'm very proud of Aaron because right away in boot camp, they made him chief scribe.
Oh.
And so being chief scribe, he was the one who set up all of the training times for the 3 drill sergeants that were there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was supposed to like be in bed, lights out at whatever, 9, 10 o'clock, however boot camp works.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be midnight and his drill instructors, his DIs would come out and say, Aaron, you need to go to bed. And he's like, well, just a moment, you know, I'll get there. I'm almost done. But he'd be awake until 3 o'clock in the morning, making sure that their schedules were right because he had other scribes under him. And it's like they just couldn't, I guess they just didn't line up the right job or, you know, if they didn't, Aaron wasn't satisfied. He wanted it to be perfect for the DIs. So
it's almost like he took a leadership role in boot camp.
In boot camp, yeah. I mean, he was already doing that. And then, of course, they would, you know, his TIs would get on, you need some sleep. And I'm thinking, number one, I don't understand how this kid ever, like, not slept.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing Aaron, because he loves to talk, I don't think he's ever finished a meal. So I was wondering if he ever ate in boot camp because, you know, you got, what, 5 minutes or something to eat? Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then it was probably after SOI.
Okay.
He came out to see me, and we chatted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I left with the conversation, and he goes, I said, Aaron, I will always support you in whatever you choose to do. And he said, thank you, Mom. Because he knew that Mom wasn't super happy.
Right.
But yet I'm still proud. You know, it was one of those, you're very torn as a parent. You know, I'm always like, they should bring the parents in and tell them, this is what you need to expect.
Yeah.
They should do this as a family thing and get the family involved right away. So that way everybody can make a decision, because it doesn't just affect the person who's joining the Marines.
Right.
It literally affects the whole family. And so forward fast, you know, of course, Aaron got to go on a MEU, which he was able to go over to, first they did Haiti, you know, and did humanitarian relief. And then they went over to Djibouti, and they were off the coast of Yemen. And I know that there's a lot of Marines that just didn't like Djibouti, you know, but Aaron loved it.
So at that time he was with 1-9, right?
Yeah, he was, as soon as he got out of SOI, he got stationed at Camp Lejeune, was immediately 1-9. So he was 1-9 for his whole career.
Did he like being out there in Lejeune? Because he was a West Coast Marine, right? He went to
MCRD. It's very odd because we're from Illinois, but he goes out of the St. Louis, Missouri depot.
Right.
So because he was recruited out of St. Louis, then he came to MCRD. And so he did MCRD, and then from there his SOI was at Camp Pendleton.
Do you remember what training, platoons or anything like that, any of that information?
I don't remember any of that. I would almost have to look back.
Okay.
But I know that when he got to SOI, he became an 0352.
0352.
So he's a Sabre missileman.
Oh, nice.
So he's a rocket man, you know. So I sit there, oh, he's a rocket man. But no, he said he did that right away. And because they didn't have a need on the West Coast for him, he and a lot of the guys he trained with in SOI got stationed out in Lejeune. So it wasn't like he was the only one that came out. There was a bunch of them that actually had come out.
Did most of them come to 1-9, or did they split up from there?
No, they were all 1-9.
Oh, awesome. So same training all the way up to Fleet Marine Corps.
Yep.
And then that's when, so how long was it from his arrival time in Lejeune to go into, you said the MEU?
Djibouti, the MEU. He did the 24th MEU, and I want to say that he arrived in January he arrived in April, May, however long SOA is, maybe March, April of 2009. And so the MEU was in 2010.
2010, okay.
Yeah, so it had been, you know, they did the training for the MEU, then he went on the MEU, did that in 2010.
So during that workup, because we got to do all sorts of training going into any deployment, was he excited? Was he like thrilled that his first deployment was going to be on a MEU, or was he more looking to go to like Afghanistan, Iraq?
I think he was taking the training as it was coming, but also at that time that he was training, I wound up breaking my leg. So that was an interesting conversation, because his girlfriend at the time happened to be on the phone with me, and I thought we had hung up from each other, so I did not realize that she was like still, you know, at that time I had a headset on, and I didn't realize she was still there, and I was like, I was gonna try to call 911, and I didn't realize till I picked up the phone she was still there. I'm like, I gotta hang up. I need to call 911. I had a car accident and I broke my leg. And so after paramedics arrived and all this fun stuff, and I'm on my way to the hospital in ambulance, my son calls, you know. And so the paramedics were great. They're like, hey, do you want to answer your phone? I said, sure. And then, you know, he goes, Mom, what's going on? You know, Jessica called and said you were in an accident and that you broke your leg. And I'm like, yeah. I said, they're taking me over to the hospital, and this is where I'm going to be. And, you know, I was like really calm. And I said, well, they're starting IV and they're going to give me some morphine, so I'm going to have to hang up for now. And the paramedics are like, we have never seen anybody who's a trauma person, you know, be this calm. I said, well, you don't understand. My son's in the Marines and he is training to go on a deployment. I have to be calm because he's got to keep his head in the game.
Yeah.
And I found that was the big thing. He had to keep his head in the game.
Yeah.
And so when he did the MEU, like I said, he went all over the Middle East, you know. They got to go to Qatar, Dubai, you know, and because they were on ship, you know, he was on the Mesa Verde. In the midst of this deployment, he got to switch over to the Nassau. They were taking volunteers. So he went over to the Nassau. Well, unknown to them, the Nassau hadn't taken a break for quite a while. So whenever they decided to give the Marines some time off, they actually landed in the Seychelles Islands. And so he got to go to the Seychelles. So he got to go to a lot of different countries. But I think his favorite, and the thing that he always emphasized to me, is like, Mom, the people here, they're nomadic tribes in Djibouti.
Right.
And he said, they're hungry. And so when we give them food, they're so grateful for it. And he was like, Mom, I want to bring like 4 of these kids home with me. I just want to bring them home and raise them. And so my takeaway is that I know the Marines do all this tough training.
Yeah.
And I know what they're trained to do. But I think we forget about the humanitarian aid part of it.
Yeah.
They did humanitarian aid in Haiti. They gave humanitarian aid in Djibouti, you know, and that's the part that I think my son enjoyed the best.
And that part of working towards God's army, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just, he truly enjoyed the humanitarian aid part of it.
Right.
And so, like I said, when he came home, he was happy to be in Africa. He loved it. Matter of fact, he told me, he goes, Mom, I'll tell you what, there is nothing like the smell of rain when it comes on the desert.
Wow.
Nothing like the smell of rain. And that really was pivotal for us a little later on in his life. And so after he gets back to, you know, Camp Lejeune, and they go about everything, of course they start training for Afghanistan.
Right.
And he went over there and was able to get through that deployment. During that deployment, one of his best friends had gotten shot in the leg. So he was very concerned about him. You know, he wanted to go see him in the hospital right away.
Right.
I'm like, no, you cannot, you and one other guy cannot go traveling in Afghanistan to the hospital by yourselves. You better take like a whole, you know, platoon with you.
Yeah.
You know, but he didn't get to see him in the hospital, but he did get to see him at his Purple Heart ceremony. And
that must have been amazing to be there for that, at least.
Yeah, because it's one of his best friends. And at the end of that deployment, you know, he and 2 of his best friends took a picture together. And it was that last week they were in Afghanistan, and they were happy that they had all made it out. And that was a very unique deployment for 1-9 at that time, because they did not lose anybody on that deployment.
Right.
And so coming back from that, you know, he wouldn't express anything of what happened in Afghanistan. You know, he never talked about it. And he wouldn't talk about it.
Do you think it was sort of like a trauma thing, or
I think he just didn't want to. You know, he always protected Mom. He wasn't going to share those things with Mom.
Right.
And so his friends, of course, you know, they had 4-year contracts. Aaron had a 5-year. So they get out, you know, he's still in. And unfortunately, they were, you know, in the process of actually training another set of Marines to go back to Afghanistan.
For their second push, right?
Yeah. And so he was not, you know, he was getting out. He was scheduled to get out in a couple of months, you know, and finish his contract up. And they had asked him to go on this training mission. Well, you know how it is. Well, we need you to go on this training mission. So Aaron wound up going on this training mission. And it got to be, you know, to the last week. And it was one of those that we had this feeling. It was, how can I say, it was really interesting. Because a week, you know, before it was supposed to wrap up, you know, Aaron called us, and that means his dad, I, and his sister, and said, yeah, I'm going to be heading over to Hawthorne, Nevada. And we're going to be, you know, training these guys and, you know, on the ranges and stuff. And I know that I said, I know, and we're all separate. We're not in the same, you know, areas of each other. And we all told him, you know, whatever you do, don't volunteer for anything. Don't be around anything that explodes, you know. We just had this sinking feeling.
Right.
He goes, Mom, don't worry about it, you know. That's not what I'm going to be doing, because, you know, he's a rocket man, you know.
Right.
He goes, I'll be on the rifle ranges. Don't worry about it, you know. We're like, okay. And so we just, you know, we all, in our own way, told him that we were proud of him. Each one of us, we didn't know each other did say any of these things to each other, you know, but we all told him how proud we were of him. And he told each one of us back how proud he was of us. And so forward fast into, unfortunately, March 18th of 2013, that was a fateful night, 4/19, because that night they were going into their last training of the evening. It was with Alpha Company and my son's weapons company. He's always been weapons and he's been CAT. And so he was called up at the last minute to be a positional safety officer on the mortar range. So the next morning, I get a call at 7 o'clock, in the morning from my ex-husband, which he never calls, so this is odd.
Right.
So I pick up and he goes, "Have you heard from Aaron? Have you heard from Aaron?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't heard from Aaron. What's going on?" He goes, "There was an explosion on the base. It was with Aaron's group, out there training. Have you talked to Aaron?" And at the same time that he's on the phone with me, my doorbell rings. And at that time, my husband that I was married to, he's like, "Wait for me." And I'm throwing on a robe and I'm still talking to my ex-husband on the phone. And I'm opening up the door and there's 2 Marines standing there. And I'm like, "Is this about Aaron? Is this about Aaron?" And all they could ask me was, "Are you," and they would say my name.
Right.
And they go, "You have to answer our questions." And I did. And then it's the worst thing that a parent could ever hear. When they told me that on March 18th of 2013 at 9:55 p.m., Corporal Aaron Ripperda was killed in a training accident. And at the same time that they're telling me, I am telling his dad. And when we reflect back on it, we said we brought him in the world together, and Aaron somehow arranged it that we found out together. And they also proceeded to say that because his dad was in Illinois and I was in California at the time, that there was actually Marines at his door at the same moment, because what they did for the 7 families is everybody was finding out at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that became a big whirlwind. And I have to digress a little bit. So the evening of March 18th, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a text message that said, "I bless the rains down in Africa." And that message to me told me that it's either raining or about to rain, because he had mentioned that there is nothing like the smell of rain coming on the desert.
Just to make sure he wasn't trying to sing that Toto song to you.
No, he was not singing. He was just texting,
Gotcha.
but probably. And so that song, that text message, because he would text message little lyrics like that to his friends randomly. That was like his last group text message. And so forward fast through all of the hard stuff. I mean, the not knowing what to do as a Gold Star family member. I mean, we didn't even hear that term. What do you do when your son is killed? Yeah. Nobody teaches you about this stuff. No. There's no training, and I wish that there was. I mean, we had to wait because there was an investigation. And when Aaron arrived at the airport, it was, April the 1st. And we were there, and it was very odd. Like they had us wait at the USO, and then when they were ready for us, they brought us over, and then they're like, we don't know what to expect. And then, somebody's ushering us into a hangar. And when you walk in, all we saw was all these Marines standing on the line, basically forming like a square around, his casket. And there was an area that we can enter through. And one of Aaron's best friends was able to escort his body. And so it was good that he was able to bring Aaron home. Yeah. But I had to ask him, I'm like, well, what do you do? I don't know what to do.
You felt a little lost.
And he was just like, whatever you want. So I remember going up to the casket and putting my hand on it saying, you're home and they can't hurt you anymore. And, we had to go through, going to the funeral home and we had the Patriot Guard riders because at that time everybody knew that the Westboro Baptist Church wanted to protest.
Right.
And so Aaron had 209 Patriot Guard riders escort him from the airport in St. Louis to the funeral home in Illinois. And there was another man there. His name was Larry the Flag Man. And he had over 2,200 flags that were all set up to be able to greet Aaron as he came in. It had been windy that day, and somehow a photographer caught this, but one of Aaron's best friends, who's in the Air Force, actually went out and straightened all the flags. And they had caught him. He's standing on a bridge coming into this town, and they asked him, "Why are you doing this?" And he goes, "He's my best friend. I'd walk 1,000 miles for him." And so he straightened all the flags for Aaron. And we get to the funeral home, and it's very overwhelming because, we know that initially it's just going to be the Marines and our family getting to see Aaron. And they have to make sure everything looks good. And what affected me a lot at that time was one of his friends was just broken.
Yeah.
And I held him. It was a Marine crying. And I said, it's going to be okay. We're going to heal together. And so what that has done is it allows me with 1-9 and with the friends that are still there, we have formed this unbelievable bond. And I will refer to these boys, they're my Marines, They're my son's friends. I'm very blessed. 7 of them have named their sons after my son, which is just an incredible thing to do.
Awesome.
And I've just found that 1-9 has become family. That's why they invite us to these reunions, because they have accepted us as Gold Star families as part of their family.
Because you are a part of our family.
Thank you. And I appreciate it because you're one of my Marines too. One of my boys,
Oh, Mama Ripperda.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks after they buried Ripperda and the other men, we had a ceremony down in 2nd Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division. The whole division came out. We even had 7, at the time the Marine Corps had 7 4-star generals. And I just wanted to know, because I hadn't seen you there. Did you ever make it out to that?
Oh, yes. I was actually in North Carolina. We got to meet General Amos.
Okay.
He was the commandant at the time.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because anybody who knew Aaron had to watch So I Married an Ex-Murderer. And anybody who's ever watched that film had seen that there is a bagpiper. And the piper that day, he was trying to play Amazing Grace, and all of a sudden his pipes went, and just started, laughing to ourselves. Anybody who knew Aaron just knew that that was a sign that he was okay, because we all heard, we got a piper down, we have a piper down. And but thank you for asking me about that.
That was awesome that you were able to make it to Aaron.
Yeah.